Iole. Gotcha.
Hey, fat fish heads. It's time for another edition of the hottest new podcast on all platforms, Fat Fish. Sit back and strap yourself in for the wildest ride on the open seas. Now, flap your fins for the fabulous Fat Fish brothers, Eric Fish Snyder and Brad Grunny Grunberg, a.k.a. Snacks.
I always got chopping. Well, I did a little kind of a shuffle. I did a kind of an uppercut roundhouse because today, as we hit show 68, welcome Mr. Grunny, Mr. Snacks, Mr. Chunky Love, Mr. Johnny Cocktails, Mr. I Comb My Hair. I mean, all the million Mr. Magoo. Well, I'm Mr. Magoo, Mr. Fred Flintstone. We are honored today, and we'll get into our Michigashan spiel later, to have one of the gurus, biggest aficionados, and experts on the sport of boxing and the MMA and UFC, and we're going to talk about the power slap. We have Kevin Iole in today, and I say no more. We're very lucky to have him. Let's bring him in, okay?
All right, let's do it.
Welcome, everyone. I want to say about 6'2", 240 out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Kevin Iole.
Hey. Holy. You know what, Fish? Kevin Iole looks a little like Mr. Bill Walton. How about it? Have you ever got Bill Walton a little bit?
When I played summer league basketball in Pittsburgh, I used to wear number 32, and they call me Walton.
Oh, let's see.
Now, of course, I didn't play anything like Bill Walton. Nor did I have red hair or a ponytail down the middle of my back, but you know.
Right. Or talk about cactuses all day long. Yeah. And the Grateful Dead. Thanks for being on the show, Kevin.
Appreciate you having me. Thanks.
Love it. It's good seeing you. I haven't seen you in a while, and I met Kevin at a restaurant I used to manage years ago, and we just hit it. I knew who he was because a more handsome fellow that used to be a podcast partner of mine was friends with Kevin named John Daly, and we had to give John Daly a Snickers bar and turn into Brad Grunberg, and the fact that it's funny. As long as I've known you, I forgot that you're from Pittsburgh, and the fact that you love the Penguins, you love the Pirates, you love the Steelers. It's such a great sports city, and it's a grinder, blue-collar city. My wife's from Youngstown, which is, 50, 60 miles away, Youngstown, Ohio. And we're very good friends with a guy named Boom Boom Mancini. I was in his wedding, he was in mine. It was just, it's a great friendship. Yeah, I'm very close. You have covered his career. You covered this sport for so long. I mean, you won the Nat Fleischer Award 2007 for boxing journalism, epic greatness, and you were with Yahoo Sports forever. I want to ask you, the first question is, you're around my age, okay? Do you miss Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran and Aaron Pryor and all the greats? And
I go like right there, and I got on the wall Sugar Ray right next to me. So, and I got all these paintings of Ali up around me. Leonard and Duran, Ali and Foreman, Ali and Liston, Ali and Frazier, me and Floyd Mayweather. So I have, so Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard were the two guys that I really looked up to the most in boxing. And, that the era of the 80s especially was a great era all time in boxing. When I think of boxing, I think that, boxing kind of took a decline in 1960, right? The NFL was starting to come up then. We had the greatest game ever played. They called it 1958, where the Colts and the Giants and the NFL championship game. And that was when the NFL really started to get big. The AFL came around in 60, the merger in 67. So that started, kind of boxing's downhill decline. But if you think about it, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there were a lot of iconic figures that remain. Muhammad Ali was there, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvin Hagler. You think about it, some of the greats that we celebrate today came up in that era when we were growing up.
Right.
By the way, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Fish. Yeah.
Well, I just want to transition, Brad, and then you go. is that I feel jaded because the great Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier and George Foreman and Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard. It seems like the question is that era lost forever, the love of boxing, and has the UFC and MMA taken away that luster, and there's a more passion for that?
Well, I think it has taken a lot away. I mean, let's think about this too. There's the world has changed from a sports standpoint, right? There's a lot more sports. So if we go back, let's go back to when Ali was in the Olympics, 1960, right? At that point, the NHL was a 16 league. The NBA wasn't very big. The NFL was not a powerhouse at that point. And I think it's fair to say that in the United States, at least, the three biggest sports in the country were probably baseball, boxing, and horse racing, right? I mean, that was like the biggest. Now, the NFL is king. The NBA is not far behind. When I was in high school, I graduated high school in 1977. NBA playoff games, not regular season games, were tape delayed at 11:30 p.m. You wanted to watch an NBA playoff game, and you had to stay up, and then you couldn't watch Johnny Carson, right? You had to watch, you had to watch the playoff game tape delayed. Obviously, now that is really different. The NHL has gotten bigger. Soccer in the United States has gotten bigger. Obviously, MMA has come on. So there's a lot more, and with the explosion of the internet, there's a lot more, niches that are being filled, right? And I think that all contributed to boxing's downfall. Now, boxing is, shot itself in the foot. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of fundamental problems with the sport that would be a lot, it would be a lot better if those were fixed. But, boxing is a victim of a lot of things, not only its own incompetence.
Kevin, first of all, I want to point out that no one is around Fish's age. Okay, I'm going to start that. He had started and said that you're around his age. No, this man's an old man. But no, I have a question for you. You're the perfect guy to ask. I have a problem with some of these boxers going too long. Muhammad Ali is one of the greatest of all time, right? But I remember him being pummeled in the corner at Caesar's Palace by Larry Holmes, and Larry Holmes looking back at the ref going, please stop this. This is my hero. Okay. Why do these, and then Sugar Ray Leonard, why does he, and then he gets put on his ass. Why do these guys go on? Can't they stop? And Marvelous Marvin Hagler against Tommy Hearns could be one of the greatest I've ever seen. That 3 minutes is just something really special. What is your opinion about some of these guys finally retiring and, moving on?
Well, the problem is it's twofold in boxing. I mean, if you're going to become a boxer, you're usually not coming from a well-to-do family. It's not always the case. But, usually if you're into boxing, you're growing up poor, you're growing up where you don't have a lot, and you have to fight for everything you get. And you finally get rich, and now you retire, and guess what? There's not that money coming in. And you see these fighters, they spend it as fast as they make it, right? It's not like they have a lot of financial advisors and they're hiring, really solid people to advise them. And as a result, they go through the money. The second thing is, they miss the spotlight. I mean, boxing is that unique sport where, there's really nobody, maybe a quarterback in football that equates to like a boxer. You have to go talk to, Sugar Ray Leonard about his fight, and that's it. And he's getting all that attention. And when he's fighting, everybody wants to know what he thinks about his fight. And when he's not fighting, they want to know what he thinks about the fight going on, right? And so they miss that, their ego, they miss. And so that's hard for a lot of guys to walk away from. And I think that's why you see so many guys come back. They have no other way to make an income, and they also just miss everything that goes with it. When the phone's not ringing, when people aren't taking pictures, when people aren't asking for autographs, it becomes lonely, and you get used to a certain way of doing things, and all of a sudden, now somebody else is the big star who's taking your place. You miss the spotlight.
Sure. And I think it's what bothers me is like I said earlier, that I'm jaded. I look forward to these great matches, and you knew great fighters in every division. Now I'm thinking about two things. Ray Mancini calls you one time, Kevin, and goes, that voice is Don't buy that don't buy that bullshit Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. He's going to toy with him for 3 rounds and knock the crap out of him. And I can't believe the people that fell for that. And I can't believe I have to ask you because you're the guru. I cannot believe the interest in Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. It's insane. I mean, are you insulted by that?
Mike Tyson is one of the most popular boxers of all time. When he fought the exhibition in 2020 with Roy Jones, an exhibition fight that there was clearly, it did 1.6 million on pay-per-view. Tyson is one of the biggest draws ever. So when he comes back, people want to see him fight. The Tyson Jake Paul fight, if it happens, and we'll see, I'm still questioning whether it's going to happen. When you're 58 years old, there's a lot of things that happen that you guys know that, maybe makes it difficult. Yeah, exactly. To make it difficult to get into the ring. So we'll see if it happens. But if it happens, it's going to be the most viewed boxing match of all time. That is a testament. It's free on Netflix, and it's going to be worldwide. So we haven't had a worldwide platform that really broadcasts. Amazon is doing some boxing now, but they geo restrict where it goes. When Netflix does this Paul and Tyson fight, it is going to be worldwide, so everybody can watch it at the same time. You're going to have, in my opinion, several 100 million people watching that at one time. Just think about what the impact that's going to have culturally.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Kevin, I want to let you know that I'm 38 years old. So you guys,
I can tell. Yeah, I can tell.
I use all the George Hamilton.
Oh yeah, you're older than me.
Yeah, of course. Right? Look at me. Yep. But here's a question for you. I was lucky enough to be involved in the Tyson Holyfield with the ear biting, and I did a commercial with comedian Joe Torre for Gold Beer. I don't know if you remember this. Don King wanted to get in the beer business, so he was promoting it, and Gold Beer sponsored it. And I got to take my dad to Las Vegas, third row, and watch this spectacle. Okay. First of all, my favorite referee of all time, Mills Lane, let's get it on, was the ref. What is your opinion about that fight? Mike Tyson he just flipped out because Evander Holyfield had his number, right? He knew exactly how to play him every time. And I think this was the second fight.
Yeah. Well, they fought, let me go back to the amateurs. They never competed against each other in the amateurs, but they sparred. And Holyfield was older than Mike. And I think, from an early age, he had that, he had the man strength before Mike did, right? And I think, he just kind of knew he was better than Mike from a long time. And they were supposed to fight in 91 at Caesar's Palace. And then Mike got put in jail on the rape allegation. And then it took until 96 when he got out and he won a few fights for them to fight. And in the first fight, Holyfield's style was such that, he would duck the head and come forward. And Mike was a come in type fighter. They were clashing heads a lot. Mitch Halpern, the late Mitch Halpern, ref that fight. And Mike was just furious because he felt like Holyfield was intentionally headbutting him. Now, Holyfield was butting him, but he wasn't intentionally butting him. That was the way Holyfield fought. And Mike's style made it even worse, because Mike's moving in, bobbing and weaving, going in. Holyfield's, taller, fighting with his head down a little bit. They're banging heads. So when it happens in the rematch in the first round, Mike just lost his cool, and bingo, in the third round, he decides to bite him. It was one of the most, I think probably the most iconic moment of my career. But what I remember even more, and that whole night was crazy. Colonel Bob Sheridan, who's no longer with us, was announcing Don King's feed that night, and he had a heart attack after the bite happened, and they're carrying him out of the ring on a stretcher. He was sitting ringside. They're carrying him, and all the chaos is going on. There was so much craziness. Then I went up into the casino because there was reports of gunfire in the casino. So I'm trying to report on what's going on in the casino. It was nutty. I saw people turning over blackjack tables, and all kind of crazy stuff that night. That was one of the memorable nights that I will ever have.
Oh, wow. Well, gee,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about you talking about that. I'm going back to the Rocky movie when Clubber Lang, fought Rocky and Mickey had a heart attack and they pulled him out of a stretcher. So you kind of literally lived that.
That was a true story with the Colonel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. He had so many incidents in that, and right during this major fight there, while all the craziness is going on, the Colonel's getting taken out on a stretcher.
When we before we move on to MMA, let me ask you, what's your favorite boxing movie of all time? Mine, Rocky 1 is my favorite of all time. What's yours?
I would say probably Rocky as well. I was in Rocky Balboa, so maybe
Oh, wait a minute!
I remember. I was going to say that.
Yeah. Rocky Balboa, maybe, but the other one I liked that I watched as a kid was Somebody Up There Likes Me by Rocky Graziano, and that was really a cool movie.
Was that Paul Newman?
Paul Newman.
Yeah, Paul Newman played him.
Yeah.
So I got one quick question, Brad, before we transition into MMA. Brad brought up Marvin Hagler, who was my favorite fighter besides Boom Boom. And I thought, to travesty, I've watched that Sugar Ray Leonard Marvin Hagler fight 50 times. And I know Hagler thinks he got robbed. And I know he quit the business saying, I got robbed. They wanted to give Sugar Ray that win. Give me your take on that. Because that's everyone that's a boxing fan remembers that fight and has a different opinion.
I covered that fight. And the night of the fight, my thought was that Leonard had barely won the fight. I have probably watched that fight because of the controversy 20 times or more since, right? And I scored it a number of times. I know I still watch it. When Marvin died, I watched it. But when I probably have it 50-50, because each time you watch it, you see something different, right? Your live version, you're limited by where you are and how things unfold in front of you. Sometimes you don't see certain things that happen, especially now. A lot of times, you'll have people at a UFC fight, they'll see us on TV and, we're in the background and they'll say, you're not even watching the fight. But what is happening is there's camera people all in front of us. Like I would have, if it was on the other side of the ring where Dana White sits, I would have the best seat in the house, right? I'm dead center on the octagon, right in the middle. But then there's the cameraman and everybody. So the fight's on my side and I'm trying to look. And so people see me on TV doing this. Well, what I'm doing is looking at the scoreboard is over in the corner because I can't see directly in front of me because I see some guy's butt in front of me, right? A cameraman's behind. So I'm looking over here and people go, you're not even watching the fight. It's like, no, we are watching the fight. So, but when you watch a fight live, and now like as a reporter, we're on Twitter and we're tweeting. And so, you might be typing and you look up and you hear the crowd go crazy. What happened? Well, you can't really score the fight effectively, right? So I've watched that fight 20 times and I've scored it different ways each time, which tells me the fight was extraordinarily close and it could have gone either way.
Yeah. I say, Marvelous Marvin Hagler won that fight. No question about it. By the way, have you ever been in a fight, Kevin, in your life?
Well, have I been in a real boxing match? No.
No. Like street fight, like in school.
Yeah, you see my nose there. So yes, and the answer would be yes. So and let's just say that all these great fighters would have no threat from me.
Hey guys, you can catch the Fat Fish podcast on Facebook Live, YouTube, DBTV, Roku, and Podbean. That's all our listeners are on Podbean. Check that out. Get your sources. We got clips of Fat Fish, including this great man, Kevin Iole, at TikTok at 61Fish6134. Anyway, I got to congratulate him, Brad. You go. I always miss this. You were elected to the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame in 2014. That's huge. Congratulations.
Thank you. That was fun. Yeah, that was really cool getting elected to that and being in with so many of the great fighters that have fought in Nevada. And Michelle Corrales, Diego Corrales' widow, is the head of it, and she does such a great job running it. Even to this day, it's a phenomenal organization. They do really good work, and they help charity a lot.
By the way, no one really watches this show. About three people, my parents and Fish's wife. Who is your favorite boxer of all time? Who's the one guy that
we already talked about him? Muhammad Ali.
Definitely Muhammad Ali, huh?
And Sugar Ray Leonard would be number two. Now I would say like if you look, I got some gloves back here. And some of those gloves, Alexis Arguello signed a glove for me, so he's one of my favorites. You know, Duran, Hagler, you know, Joe Frazier, I loved. You know, I mean, it's kind of funny because I mentioned Duran and Hagler when I said Leonard was my favorite, but I love, you know, those guys were so iconic. They were all great, and I loved them all. You know, Joe Frazier, I was a huge Joe Frazier fan. And I got to know Joe Frazier in his later life and before he passed away. And, you know, it was sad the way Joe's life went, you know, and he kind of didn't have much at the end. But Joe was a great guy. Aaron Pryor was another one that I really loved, you know, watching Aaron Pryor fight. And the guy that I think is the greatest fighter of all time, by far, not even close, to Sugar Ray Robinson. And to me, you know, I've watched so many of the highlights of him and read so much about him, and I just wish I could have sat ringside to watch him box.
No, what was Muhammad Ali like? What kind of relationship did you have with him? He was kind of a goofy guy, right?
So I started covering boxing in '79, just when he was going on. So I didn't cover his fights. So I got to know Ali through Gene Kilroy, who lives here in Las Vegas, who was a former casino host, and he worked with Ali from 1960 up and through the end of Ali's career, and then they remained very close friends. And the first time I met Ali, that was at a time when he had trouble speaking some days. Other days he could talk and he was normal. And so Gene had told me, he said, I want to introduce you to Muhammad. I want you to talk to him. So the day that I met him, he couldn't talk. So I walked up to him and I came around a corner and he's sitting there with his wife, Lonnie. And Gene brings me up and Ali, you know, goes like this. So he motions for me to come in. So I move my head in and he puts his hand behind my head and he pulls my ear to his mouth. And he says in this very low voice, he says, "You must be the greatest given what my friend says about you," meaning Gene.
Oh, wow.
And my heart, you know, to me, it's like I'm sitting here. It's almost like I'm looking at God, right? You know, I idolized this guy from as long as I can remember. And, you know, and then he says that to me and I couldn't wait, you know, as much as I wanted to stay there, right, and be with him. My dad was a big boxing fan. I couldn't wait to leave and call my dad. And I said, "You're not going to believe what Muhammad Ali just said to me," right?
And, you know what, Kevin? We're so honored to have the pinnacle of boxing journalism on our show. And I'm looking at your background. You have artifacts. You have all kinds of stuff from Sugar Ray Leonard, boxing gloves, Muhammad Ali. I look on the back of Brad. You see those pictures? One of them is the manager of Chick-fil-A. The other's a waiter over at Nate and Al's Deli. Every single restaurant manager or
Marla
waiter is the pictures.
Marla Gibbs right over here, man.
Marla Gibbs, yeah. Oh, God. So, you know, it's interesting because you followed the sport and covered it for so long and got such accolades. And then you have this metamorphosis. Here comes the MMA and UFC. Take us through the journey of you having to cover a new sport, which is basically boxing and kicking, what that does. When did UFC really start? And do you think that this is something that do you think boxing is in a way will go the way of sort of like the pro bowling tour? You never remember how big the pro bowling tour was when we were younger?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Huge. I don't think boxing is ever going to go away completely, but it's been minimized, right? And right. Through a lot of it through its own fault. But, you know, MMA began in '93 when it wasn't called MMA, when UFC 1 occurred, right? And they, basically, UFC 1, which was November of '93 in Denver, that was designed, which fighting style is the best? You know, is it boxing? Is it karate? Is it wrestling? Is it jiu-jitsu? Is it kung fu? What fighting style was the best? And that's what it was to determine. And I remember as a fan, now, I was a journalist at that time, and there was a lot of stuff going on in the combat sports space at that time outside of UFC. But in '93, when that was formed, there was also the Tough Man competitions going on. And if you remember those, that was promoted by a guy named Art Dorr. And Art Dorr just, would get people out of the stands and, come in and start brawling, right? And it would be like 40-second fights because nobody had trained, nobody was in shape, and they were just kind of going like this until somebody fell down. A lot of people equated that with UFC at the beginning, which it most definitely was not. Those first UFC fighters were tremendous, combat sports athletes in their own disciplines. They were good, but they weren't well known. So I watched UFC as a fan. I watched UFC 1 through, I want to say UFC 6. And then there was a moment that happened at UFC 6. There was a guy named Emmanuel Yarbrough. He weighed 600 pounds. He fought a guy named Keith Hackney, who weighed 190 pounds. And when I saw that fight, Yarbrough versus Hackney, I said, this is like pro wrestling. I'm not covering this. And so I quit watching UFC until Mark Ratner from the Nevada Athletic Commission at the time came up to me and he said, you ought to start paying attention to UFC because we're going to sanction it here in Nevada before long. And I said, they got 600 pounders fighting 190 pounders. And he said, oh, it's changed. And he told me about the rules. So I went back and started watching it. And then that's how I got back into it. Then Lorenzo Fertitta leaves the Athletic Commission and joins with Dana White to buy the UFC, and pretty much everything else is history from that point.
What was your opinion of Kimbo Slice? Those
great
fights
guy
in Miami. I'm sorry?
He was a great guy.
Oh, you knew him? Yeah. And then when he came to the UFC, he was kind of exposed, so to speak. When he was on the streets of Miami, the one punch and the guy's on his ass. But man, I mean, he was a real fucking character, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, he was a tremendous guy, had a great heart. They had these street fights or these backyard fights, right? That's where Jorge Masvidal, who is boxing tomorrow night against Nate Diaz. Masvidal and Diaz, both longtime UFC fighters. That's where Masvidal came from, those Kimbo Slice street fights, right? They used to fight in backyards on these lots. And, when MMA was kind of at a point when Senator McCain called it human cockfighting and it was banned from cable TV, you couldn't watch it. People were starting to go to YouTube and they could watch these, quote unquote underground backyard fights, and guys would just brawl with basically a very limited rule set, right? And it wasn't, and it wasn't what MMA is now, certainly, but a lot of guys got their start. And Kimbo was a guy that was great at that, and Kimbo was a guy who, really loved fighting. And I got to know Kimbo fairly well, and I can tell you he was a wonderful person. His real name is Kevin Ferguson, and just a tremendous guy who, when he got to the UFC, he just was not well-rounded enough. At the time he got to the UFC, he just wasn't well-rounded enough to compete with the athletes that were there. You had college wrestlers and Olympic wrestlers and people who were black belts and all these things. And Kimbo was just a tough dude, right? I mean, he was just a guy out of the crowd that said, I'm tougher than you are and I want to prove it. So it was interesting, but God bless Kimbo. Unfortunately, he left us way too early. Think about him a lot at the MMA fights, and he was quite a guy.
My son says to me, Dad, you got to watch this on YouTube. And I put it on and go, what? He goes, go to the site, and it's called the Power Slap. All right. And it's the newest craze right now. I don't know why it caused such anxiety in me. I've never had anxiety watching anything sports-wise other than that. Well, I want you to explain it because you cover it. But basically, people standing across from each other, and then you slap them as hard as you can in the face. And I've seen concussions and knockouts. You take it from there, Kevin.
So it started in Eastern Europe. So it was something that started in Russia, Poland, and those countries, right? And it just looked brutal, like crazily brutal. And we thought it was this thing that was never going to come here. Dana White happened to be surfing YouTube one day, and he sees a guy named Dumpling. And there was a highlight package of this guy named Dumpling, who was a heavyweight and from Siberia. And Dumpling was, just whacking people in the face. And Dana said, if we could take that sport and repackage it and put rules on it and promote it right and make it and clean it up, this can become really big. And that eventually led to Power Slap. And would you not know, that last week at the Fontainebleau, the new hotel here in Las Vegas, Power Slap 8, Dumpling made his Power Slap debut. and so he came, and he had a first round knockout in the super heavyweight division. And wow. They moved. They had to fly him from Siberia, and he had to change planes 5 times to get from Siberia to Las Vegas to get here. So that was kind of crazy. But Power Slap, I did not cover the first couple because I thought it was unnecessary violence. Yeah. And I learned, I talked to a bunch of doctors about it, some with the Nevada Athletic Commission, some who were just combat sports doctors who have covered boxing and then covered MMA. And the one thing that I learned about it that made me feel better was this. Number one, they don't get hit in sparring. So I have had the unfortunate distinction of being at 7 boxing matches in person where a fighter died. I had one with Dave Koken at the Orleans where a fighter fell on us and later passed away. He got knocked through the ropes. We were sitting up against the apron. He literally fell on top of us. We stopped him from hitting the floor. He rolled back under the ropes. He gets to one knee, takes the 10 count. Then when he goes back to the locker room, he has a seizure. He had some kind of brain damage, and he died in surgery. So I have seen 7 boxers die. So I am really sensitive to fighter health and safety. So I did not cover Power Slap at the beginning because of that. But then as I talked to doctors and I talked to people who did Power Slap and I got around, what I realized, number one, they don't get hit in sparring. And most of the injuries in boxing begin in sparring because it's not regulated and they spar like crazy. And, you hear iron sharpens iron. And so they box each other, and there's nobody to save these guys a lot of times. Right. And so they have injuries to their head, and it gets exploited in a fight. Number two, the maximum number of slaps you're going to take in any fight is 5, right? So that's if you're in a championship fight and the fight goes all 5 rounds. So basically, unlike boxing where you're getting hit 50, 60 punches a round over potentially 12 rounds, right? You're getting hit maximum 5 times. And instead of getting hit with your knuckles coming this way and you're turning your body into it, you're getting hit with this part of your hand, the palm, and you're not allowed to torque, right? So your feet have to stay on the ground, and you're allowed to turn a little bit, but you're not allowed to torque like you do when you throw a punch in boxing. So that minimizes the risk that the fighters take. Not saying it's not dangerous, not saying that you can't get hurt, but it's probably not as bad as boxing. MMA is different because in MMA, there's wrestling, there's jiu-jitsu, there's judo, there's other forms where you're not striking somebody in the head. Obviously, boxing and kickboxing, you're going to be, hitting somebody in the head, and that makes, it dangerous. But there are other ways that you can win a fight and compete that don't involve getting hit. But in pure boxing, boom, 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 boom for 12 rounds, and that's it. So, so is Power Slap my thing? Like, no, it's not. Like, I don't sit there and watch Power Slap videos on my days off, and I don't sit there pining for the next show. But I know it's popular, and it's fun to watch because of the reaction of the fighters, right? The fighters they get into it with the fans, and that and you see some crazy knockouts. And what I thought was going to be interesting, I thought people were going to just love the knockouts, but they also love it when somebody eats a big shot, right? There's a big slap and the guy takes it, and then they have to hold a little stick, and they have it behind their back, a foam roller, and usually they throw that thing down and like, you can't get me, and that type of thing. And the crowd goes crazy when that happens.
One of my favorite MMA fighters is Sean Strickland, and he was just on the Joe Rogan show and talking about his life. Wow. This guy has had a life. I mean, with his parents and his father, and he was like a white supremacist when he was a kid. I mean, the backstory of some of these fighters is incredible.
Well, that's what makes combat sports what it is, right? I mean, not that some of these people couldn't play baseball or play football or whatever, but generally they don't come from those kind of backgrounds. But that is very common in combat sports. And I mean, I have detailed so many crazy stories over my career, of backstories that people had. There was a guy, Dewey Bozella. Now, Dewey was a 52-year-old when he fought in 2012. So what would he be now? He would be, 64, right? Dewey was arrested, convicted, and put in jail for a murder that it turned out he did not commit. And he served, I want to say, 25 years in jail. DNA evidence proved that he did not commit the murder.
Oh.
He ended up getting released from prison, and one of his dreams had been to fight. He was quite an amateur boxer before he went to jail. There was a story about him out there, and so he wanted to fight. Bernard Hopkins heard about it. Bernard Hopkins put Dewey Bozella on one of his undercards in a really major fight. So Dewey got a lot of attention and got a chance to fulfill his dream and fight pro. And those are stories like that you just can't make up. They just come, and there's a ton of them in boxing.
Yeah. You said that Tyson and Jake Paul will be the most watched. Could you imagine putting Biden and Trump in a power slap against each other? How great! Or just get him in an MMA ring, or just a three-round boxing match. That's how you sell. Whoever wins the presidency.
I like to power slap and get rid of both of them. Come
there
on,
you go. The hell of let's have boxing and MMA. Kevin, how do we read you? What podcast are you on? How do we find Kevin Iole?
Well, as you mentioned at the start, I was at Yahoo Sports for a long time. Before that, Las Vegas Review Journal. Now I have my own site, KevinIole.com. So as long as you know how to spell my name, KevinIole.com, you will find me. And I cover boxing, MMA, and a little bit of power slap on there. And I started the site in January, and really doing well with it. It's the progress has been slow, but we're really expanding. And my traffic is really good now. Getting some great advertisers, and that's where you can find all my content on there.
That's great. If the Tyson Jake Paul fight happens, okay, I heard that there's some rules in the contract saying Tyson cannot come in and just destroy this guy. Do you think Jake Paul is a good boxer? Just being, or is it a carnival act? Is this
well, it depends on so is he a good boxer relative to the three of us? Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think look at what Jake has done in his career, right? No amateur boxing matches. I think his record is 9-1, if I'm not mistaken, or 10-1. Bunch of knockouts. He's done well, and I think he has some talent. Had he started when he was 15 or 13, like a lot of these kids do, who knows where he would be. I don't think he's world championship material, but I think he is a good athlete, and I think he's a good boxer for what he is. Would he beat Mike Tyson if, Jake Paul is I think 28. So if Mike was 28 and Jake Paul is 28,
it's over, right?
We got a 15-second fight.
Yeah, right.
Michael's.
But now Mike is 58.
Right.
And Mike, hey, look, Mike looked terrible his last couple fights, right? If we go back, when is the last time Mike looked good in a fight? You're looking in the mid-90s, right? And that's 30 years ago. His last couple of fights, he looked terrible. We know Jake is going to be in better shape than Mike, just because, I don't want to see Mike Tyson lose, right? Especially to this guy, right? Yeah. I don't want to see that. But I think that's what will happen. Yeah. I just don't see, like, we see the videos of Mike, doing the shoe shine.
Right.
But those are like 10 or 15-second videos.
Right.
You're not watching his sparring, the whole video of all his sparring, and you're not watching it every day. Yeah, and if you saw that, you might have a different impression. So unfortunately, I don't think Jake is a great fighter, but if the fight happens, I think he's probably going to beat Mike.
Really? And Jake Paul is the villain, basically. You know what I'm saying? He loves being the villain, and that's really what it is. It's kind of a setup thing. Why is boxing now? Everybody says, "Oh, it's all set up," and all this terrible stuff. And what's his name came back again and he lost Tyson. What's his name? The
Tyson
heavyweight.
Fury?
Yeah,
Who?
Tyson Fury. He
Oh,
came
yeah.
back and he lost. Why did he have to come back? Is it he missed the spotlight? Back to the question I had.
Well,
earlier?
I mean, he didn't come back, so to speak. I mean, he won that heavyweight title in 2015. Then he developed mental health problems, and he ballooned up to 400 pounds. He thought about killing himself. He thought about killing himself at one point. Then he came back in 2017, got himself into the 200s, under 300, and he's been fighting and he's been active ever since. He lost for the first time in his last fight in May for the undisputed heavyweight title. They're going to have a rematch. I don't think there's an issue or a question. Why did Tyson Fury come back? Tyson Fury came back in 2017 because he was one of the great fighters in the world, and he has made hundreds of millions of dollars since he has been back fighting in those 7 years, and put himself, he's going to make the Hall of Fame. He's going to be remembered as one of the great heavyweights of all time. And he's going to make a massive bag of cash in this next fight. I think the question is, some of these other guys coming back like Mike, why are those guys coming back? That's the question.
I mean, but Tyson Fury, who'd he beat? He had the trilogy with
Deontay Wilder.
Right. The third fight was incredible.
Of course.
I mean, that's like,
Great fight.
I have respect for John Elway. He won 2 Super Bowls and then he said goodbye. I mean, on that fight against Wilder, he should have said adios.
And Grunny, he did, he thought about that. So he said later, after that fight, that was October of 2021, he said, I got hit so hard in that fight, I didn't want to do that anymore. And he told his wife that was it. And then as he started thinking about it, he rested for, I think it was 9 months. He thought, hey, I can come back and do 1 or 2 more and continue to fight. And, so that's what he's done. I wish he had retired too. I think that would have been great had he done that. But to his credit, he has been really good since then, right? Losing to Alexander Usyk, who might be the best boxer of this generation, is think of what Usyk did. Undisputed cruiserweight champion, Olympic gold medalist, and then undisputed heavyweight champion. That is an amazing, amazing feat that Usyk did. And Fury lost very close to Usyk, right? It was not it was not like he got, destroyed in that fight. And they're going to fight again in December. So, I wish he had retired because he would have been on top and he would have gone out, on a high, remembered for one of the great fights of all time. But he's not one of the ones that I would point to as, hanging on too long.
Let me ask you this. The Olympics are coming up July 26th, and we all grew up in the same era. We couldn't wait to watch Olympic boxing. Can you give us one American boxer we could look at that may move on and we remember his name 5 years from now?
No, there's really none of the kids. Most of the kids that are really good, like there's a kid named Ashton Silve. He turned pro. He actually is promoted by Jake Paul. He turned pro last year. A bunch of the kids have done that. Abdullah Mason is another one. He's with Top Rank. He is a knockout artist. He's like 11-0 now. He would have been on this Olympic team. But they started realizing that the way the Olympics were going, they're better off turning pro. And so Olympic boxing, it's still big in Eastern Europe. Now, this is going, unless they're able to save it, and it doesn't look like they are, no boxing in the Olympics in 2028. So Paris will be the last games, right? Unless they're able to, there is a thing going on. They have to get 40 of the international federations to say they want boxing in the Olympics. And right now they have 30. And so they got to get 10 more countries to basically say, we want boxing in the Olympics to make it a thing. So it's big. Olympic boxing remains big in Eastern Europe. But you guys remember, you grew up in the era that I did. And, Wide World of Sports or CBS Sports Sunday or NBC, when they had their weekend, they would show amateur boxing events, U.S. versus Russia, U.S. versus Cuba. And you would get to know Holyfield, and you would get to know Sugar Ray Leonard, and you would get to know all these amateur boxers that would later become stars in the pros. And we, the first time we see as lay people in the U.S., these American boxers is when they're in the Olympics, and we don't know anything about them, and we have no connection to them. There's no, we don't feel anything for them because we haven't seen their journeys and we don't know their stories, and that is a big problem. And then you really, really, really have to want to watch Olympic boxing because it's not on NBC. It might be on CNBC, it might be streaming only, it might be USA, and it's usually going to be on at 3 a.m. So, they're not making it easy for you to watch it.
I think, you bring that up, you brought Olympic boxing. I go back to my past, and I live in the past. You'll agree with me on this one, both of you guys. Howard Cosell's greatness wasn't Monday Night Football. It was him calling boxing. Yeah. That Frazier, down goes Frazier. Remember when he called the Foreman-Frazier fight?
In Jamaica, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, you could still hear that. And he was such a boxing aficionado and so big in Muhammad Ali's career as a friend and an advocate. Let me ask you one thing, Kevin. I've known you for a long time, and it's great always chopping it up with you. But look how our city is blowing up. When we first met, there was no Golden Knights, no Aces. We have the Raiders. And with all this greatness, and the Aces are great, and the Knights have had success, and we hope I hope the Raiders, have success. This is still the boxing capital of the world, and that got lost, I think.
Well, it's the combat sports capital of the world, right?
There you go. Yeah.
UFC is here, and we have that. But I think Las Vegas now is the number one sports city in the world. You think about what has been here just in the last 6 or 9 months: the Super Bowl, Formula One auto race, UFC 300 with all those championships, Crawford Spence, undisputed welterweight championship, Canelo Alvarez, undisputed super middleweight championship. UFC 300 was one of the great cards the UFC ever put on. Stanley Cup championship, you go down the line. I think the NFL draft, the Pro Bowl, you just think of all these different things. I think Las Vegas has become the number one sports city in the world. And we're obviously building a Major League Baseball stadium, and we'll see how that does. We're going to get that NBA team when Tim Lewicki and his group builds the stadium over by the Silverton. So, we're going to have all the major sports teams. It would not shock me, and I would be shocked if we didn't get an MLS expansion franchise.
What about what Brad loved? Brad's favorite sport is basketball. We host a summer league. Okay.
Yeah. And that's what I just said. We're going to get the NBA team here.
And all the drafts that we have, NHL, all the drafts are here. It's incredible how this city, I've been here 30 some odd years. It's blowing up. I never thought that. That's a great point about all the other things. I'm thinking, look at the soccer matches we have here. The Copas, and it's insane,
Well, the one thing Las Vegas, its old Las Vegas was good at was putting on one-off events. So basically now we're getting the team sports and we're getting the franchises to come here, and we have those, so we have NFL and NHL now, soon to have MLB and NBA. But then the one-off events, the draft and the Formula One and all the other stuff that you just mentioned, I think we're going to have the Final Four in a couple of years, right? So, when that gets here, incredible. There's nobody in the country that's set up to do these events better. We have the hotel space, we have the convention space. We are set up for this, and it's the best city in the world. I mean, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
No, I wouldn't mind being in look, I get stutters on this one. I wouldn't mind going home to Malibu and living there and then watching all these great events.
Or Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, yeah. Well, we're both from Los Angeles. We both born and raised in LA. And again, you're from just that part of the country. I try to tell Brad, if you think football's big anywhere else, go to where Kevin Iole's from. That part of, you drive down the 60 going towards Youngstown. This is where Mike Ditka grew up. This is where Joe Namath grew up. This is where Joe Montana grew up.
Think about this. So from quarterbacks from Pittsburgh. So many years ago, John Unitas, Joe Namath. Then we had Dan Marino was born and raised in Pittsburgh. Joe Montana was born and raised in Pittsburgh. I mean, you just go. There's a ton of them. I used to cover high school football games when I was just starting out. And I think back now, and I have a scrapbook that's in my garage of when I was first starting and I was writing for the Valley News Dispatch, a small newspaper in suburban Pittsburgh. And I'll read those articles. Oh, this guy was at 3 Pro Bowls. This guy was, in the Super Bowl. Like, of guys, Bill Fralick, offensive lineman, who ended up going to Pitt and playing it was the number 1 pick of the Atlanta Falcons. I covered him when he was in high school. And I think of all these, these players and that I saw, I covered Marino when he was at Pitt, that it was just incredible. Pittsburgh, Western Pennsylvania, and Ohio.
Unbelievable.
Football is just incredible there. And it, not only are the players great and the coaching great, but the passion for football is massive.
Don't forget about Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban's from Pittsburgh, right?
Of course he is, and so is his brother Brian. Yeah, so
Brian, yeah.
You know what irony is, Kevin, is that you're the boxing guru that I can go to you for any boxing question. You're from Pittsburgh, yet Joe Frazier, Philadelphia, and Rocky Balboa, Philadelphia.
we don't want to talk about Philadelphia.
Oh, Kevin, this has been great. This has been so much fun.
Thank you, guys.
I really appreciate it. I'm going to give you the line for my favorite movie. Kevin, you are a madman. I want to party with you, cowboy. You and me, forget it. What movie? Stripes.
Stripes.
Yeah. You are really a character, but you're so, the knowledge you have and your career has been just something really special. And
thank you.
We want you to continue doing what you're doing because we need guys like you. You speak the truth, you write the truth, and I don't know how you're friends with Fish. I'm still trying to figure this out.
I don't want to let too many people know that.
I know. Let's keep that between us. Oh man. But we gotta hey Fish, don't you think we have to have Kevin on again?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna hook up with him. We'll exchange and hook up in Vegas and we'll do it again. But everybody, KevinIole.com. KevinIole.com. Get everything about what he's doing. Are you real quick before we let you go? Are you doing a podcast?
I have a podcast tab up there. I haven't started doing it yet. I do have a YouTube channel where I do interviews. I haven't started the podcast yet. I'm working with a company that's going to produce the podcast for me, but so that is TBA.
Well, let us know and we'll shout you out.
When do you sleep, Kevin?
Yeah, I know. I wonder that myself sometimes.
Kevin, thanks so much for being on the show, and you stay safe. Have a wonderful weekend.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Be well.
Thanks, Kevin.
See ya.
Kevin Iole, everybody. Wow, that guy. Nice pull. Nice pull, Fish.
I met him, and he brought up Dana White. We're gonna get off the thing. Dana White is by far, and I've never waited or served him anything, but when you talk to people in the business, besides you, Grunny, the greatest tipper on the planet.
Oh, he's a great guy.
So good to people. You talk about being good to people, and you love this guy and Mel Brooks, and they're all good, and they're the people you've dealt with in the Fox commissary. Dana White walks in your restaurant and the Red Sea parts to get to him if you're a waiter or a bartender. That's how great he is.
Who hangs out with him is John Orlando.
Did not know that.
John Orlando hangs out with him, and he just says he's the greatest. I want to meet him one day because he's a really special guy. Look what he's done with everything he touches. I mean, it turns to gold.
Right. And, hey, what are we drinking today, buddy? I got the grapefruit, mint, and basil. Tremendous. Talk it up.
Blackberry, lemon, and rosemary. Cloudwater.com with cloudwaterbrands.com. This is an incredible drink. I wasn't into these kind of drinks, but I am now. It's good for your gut. And as I say, I have a big gut. Mark and Barry have done a great job with this company. You go to their website, cloudwaterbrands.com, order a case. You'll thank me in the morning. It's a great drink and it's good for you.
Really is. Like I said, if you, it's amazing. I had a little food poisoning a couple of days ago.
Yeah. How you feeling?
So my wife goes, take the cloud water. Don't get Gatorade. Drink that.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you, man. Everything that was going out, built up and bulked up, no bullshit. And you drink cloud water and you stop shitting. So, and it is. I'm very proud of the product. I'm glad. We hope that even if they don't sponsor us, I'm going to talk it up every time on the show because I drink it, I believe in it, and it helps me. It's all that matters.
No, it's great. No, it's great, and they're two great guys, and we definitely promote it every show.
Yeah. We got 5 minutes, two memes, and then I got to talk to you about some stuff, current events going on. I want to talk to you about. Look, this is great. Check this out. In the 1950s, carjacking had a totally different meaning.
Oh, God.
And the guy's laying back in the front seat, and a beautiful redhead that looks like basically Rita Hayworth has that yawning, laudanum look on her face. Like, what do you want me to do now? You know? Well, let me tell you something. I didn't live in the 1950s. Close. They did the same thing then that we do now. All right.
True. Absolutely. Just different faces, man. Just different.
Next one. Check. You got to. This is a true. Check out this kid's name. He plays in the minor league. This is phenomenal. Read it.
Max Bushyhead.
His name is Max Bushyhead. You know.
Oh my!
Williamsport against State College. Is that get on people on Podbean? Go ahead, Brad. Say it.
Was he teased as a kid? Oh. God, relentless.
Max Bushyhead, unbelievable.
I hope he could fight because this guy, he's 6'1", 200. So okay.
Speaking of that, fighting. Well, look, we hit the nail on the head with all. My wife said, you guys putting comedy, Brad especially, into the Biden-Trump debate was phenomenal, and we got a lot of feedback on that. Now, I want your take on it because even though you think I'm smart, you follow politics more than I do. They say the next 10 days is critical for Joe Biden. Do you think he stays in or gets out?
Well, tonight's a big event. George Stephanopoulos is going to interview Biden on ABC News at 8 o'clock Eastern time, 8 o'clock. We're going to see what kind of shape he's in. I think, to be honest with you, I think they got to pull him, but it would be great. This is like a Rocky story. If he stays in and beats Trump for the second time, wow. Maybe he beats him and then he pulls himself because Biden can't go 4 more years. No way. No way. They can come up with all the excuses. I just saw a doctor. I'm fine. You're not fine. Okay. You're old. And the presidency takes so much out of you. You've done great. This 4 years, I think you've done magnificent. By the way, did you hear Trump on the golf course talking about it yesterday? Oh my God. He is. And somebody had their camera going. He is a fucking clown. He really is. I'm sorry.
He called Biden a pathetic piece of crap.
No. And then he went to Harris, called her. If she comes in the race, he'll beat her like whatever. I mean, who talks like this? He's just a piece of crap. I'm just trying to think.
I'm so disappointed with both.
Yeah,
both. I don't understand how we're leaving. I have a legacy kid, grandkid. You got you're chunky love. You're somewhere. You're gonna leave a legacy somewhere, but we hope
In-N-Out Burger. That's
all we need. All I care about in a president is all I care about in a president is all I care about in a president is policies that help everybody. Okay, and protect our assets and our military. Got to protect our military.
Yes.
Okay. And, my big fear, I got a minute to do. My big fear is that I think if Ukraine goes, I think Putin's going to try to go Poland. And if he goes Poland, I said this last week, then NATO's got to get involved and it's game over, man. Forget about,
Hitler, little Hitler, this guy. Yes, he'll keep going. It's a game to him. That's all he wants. It's a game. Killing people.
I saw his interview about a year and a half ago. He goes, I want to be Peter the Great, which is a conqueror. Peter the Great wanted I get it. He wants Estonia, Latvia, wants all the old provinces that got their freedom. And Ukraine had Starbucks and macaroni grills, and they had Olive Gardens, and now it's rubble. And I don't know. I don't know what. Look what happened in Britain. 14 years of that Conservative Party and the Labour Party took over. We now new prime minister in Britain, which is allegedly is our biggest ally. I think there's others, but we can go and talk politics all you want. I played both sides. I voted equally, Republican and Democrat, my entire life. Okay, because I go by your policies. I don't care what you say and this and that. That's all bullshit.
No,
but I care about what are your policies and how do you help people and how do you not help people? So
I just want people to be happy, healthy. I want them to live their prosperous life so the American dreams can still happen. Wouldn't that be nice? But
well, that's what it is. And that's the problem. We got 30 seconds. I'll end it with this, and you can have your final statement.
Yeah.
Is that no matter who your president is, we're all Americans. That's it. We've lost that. Be divided as you are, we're all Americans. All right.
Yeah.
If another foreign country was to pull a Red Dawn and drop their thing, we're all going to fight to save our way of life and not say, "Wow, let's let these guys take over because this guy being the president would have a bit worse way than they would." So, Brad, take us out.
68 in the books. We want to thank Kevin Iole, boxing aficionado, MMA, now slap fighting. This guy is great. He really is knowledgeable, and he's, and the way he delivers it, it's kind of like for dummies like me. I can understand it. But ladies and gentlemen, 68 has gone by so fast. That's Eric Fish Snyder. I'm Brad Grunny Grunberg, a.k.a. Snacks. We'll see you for 69. Dave Linden, take us home, baby.
You've been listening to the Fat Fish Podcast, heard on all your favorite platforms. Until next time.